Good evening. We're going to talk about Subarus, or you know the drill. Yeah, normal question and answer session. Ask me anything you want, Subaru related. I will try my very best to answer it. I can see there's a load of questions already in there, and a few guys on board and asking questions, and I'm steaming up again. That's the problem with having a shower just before I come on stream. So Subaru related. If you don't know me, if you've not been here before, I'm Duncan. I map Subarus for a living. Been doing that for 20 years now, give or take a month or two. And yeah, in the UK, we are blessed with everything from the early Imprezas right the way up until about 2017, when Subaru gave up on the UK, unfortunately. We are starting to get some of the new vehicles through, some FA20 engine, Levorg STIs, those sort of things, but as yet, not really many of the VB or the later cars. So if your questions are related to the DI cars, then probably not got the direct experience related to tuning those in particular. So if you've got a question, EJ engine question, tuning, modifications, what works, what doesn't work. I can see I've already got a question about cylinder 4 cooling mod. What works, what doesn't work, modifications, tuning, mapping, anything you like. Pop it in the live chat box. Put a Q at the beginning of it, and that means it's easier for me to see that it's a question. So thank you. And let me crack on and try and answer some of the questions once my glasses have finished steaming up. Right, okay. So we got Paco Jones with the SG9. Get my question in early. I think your question was in there before I even started. And I'm still steaming up. 2006 Forester STI, still on the VF41. What gains can you expect with the turbo rebuilt as a hybrid, and what does that typically cost? It depends who's building it, to be honest. Generally speaking, you would be charged probably between £700 and £1,000 in the UK for doing that kind of thing. Sorry, cylinder 4 cooling mod is just I can't wear those, they're steaming up. Typically up to about £1,000 to hybridise the standard turbo, but on the standard turbo you can get about 340 horsepower, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. I know on my Forester STI it made a little bit less, made 328 I think it was, from memory, on the standard turbo, standard top mount. With a bigger top mount or a front mount, you would get more power, but it's a shame to cut a bumper on a Forester STI because they're quite rare, and fitting a front mount is they've only got a very small hole at the front there for the airflow to go through. With a hybrid version of the VF41, either with a ball bearing core or a bigger sleeve bearing core, you're probably in the region of the 370, but I probably wouldn't go more than that on the standard engine. So that's probably where you're going to get to. The standard 505cc injectors in the Forester STI side feed yellows, they'll probably run out around that point anyway, so it's a good point to stop if you're on a standard engine. Hope that's answered it. Right, cylinder 4 cooling mod. I think it's a load of bullshit. People sell it, people fit it, people that have fitted it say it works well, but I don't see how they can say it's working well when there isn't a comparison for what it's doing as opposed to what was there before. I find it an absolute pain in the arse to bleed the cooling system with it, and I don't see the point. I've never run it on any of my cars, right from standard power up to 850 horsepower. Never needed it. So, you know, if I've not needed it, I've not fitted it. And I personally wouldn't recommend fitting it. I know Neil has it and, you know, he thinks it's great. I don't know how he's judging that, but yeah, I think it's snake oil. Personally. Right, Sean James. Hi Duncan, fitted a sports cat on my Decathlon Bug WRX. Have a PO136 bank 1 sensor 2 come up. Check engine light come on one time. 136. I don't know off the top of my head what 136 is. Yeah, generally, oh, there's a follow-on to that. Is it a bad O2, rear O2 sensor? Does it need mapping now? Yeah, generally, if it's the rear O2 sensor, you'd probably switch it off anyway, particularly on a Bug WRX. It's doing absolutely nothing. So I wouldn't worry too much about it being an issue when it comes to mapping it, and I would certainly recommend at least getting a tweak on the map. I would recommend just switching that code off. Easy to do, and yeah, no downside. Right, evening Mel, evening Colin, evening Fez, evening Neil, hi. Sorry, you know, about the cylinder 4. You're here because Ed told you to. Yeah, well, hi Fred, I hope you're well. Right. Da-da-da-da-da. Right, Legacy B4 twin turbo bought and sent to Spain, can't register it. EU standards won't even test it. I know that they have some JDM cars in Portugal. I'm sure they are around in Spain as well. So it'd be worth speaking to members of the Subaru clubs in Spain and Portugal just to see how they've registered those cars there. They are registered. They're on, you know, local plates, so it is possible, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Right. Hello Duncan, I'm watching from Chile. Blimey, I don't think we've had one from Chile before. It must be morning there, I guess. 92 Legacy Wagon EJ 206 swapped, humble project, but too funny. Thank you. No worries. Nice project. You know, in a lot of the weird and wonderful countries, and I'm not calling your country weird, but like the non-US, non-UK, or whatever, like, people modify the cars that they got. So there's lots of engine swaps into the cars that are already there. Because the cars, you know, they're not rusting away where you are, whereas those sort of cars here get deteriorated by salt on the roads and they just rust away. And because it's more expensive to repair or fix or keep them on the road, they tend to just go to the big car graveyard in the sky, unfortunately. Maybe. Okay. Yeah, this time of year, fitting a cooler stat, it's going to run cooler. You could always blank off a bit of the radiator and do it that way, but it's a bit of a bodge. You could change the stat back to a standard one. Right, does a sports cat or D-cat, hi Rob, allow ignition timing to be advanced further than versus a standard stock downpipe and cats? Generally, yes, but not always. Normally, you would see like more air going through the engine, and because there's less back pressure, you would have a cleaner burn, basically. So you would find that you'd be able to put more ignition timing in there, but doesn't always follow that things are better with a sports cat or a D cat. It depends on the engine and the car, but generally speaking, yes. Yeah, it's big. Yeah, engine swaps and all those sort of things are very complicated. Like the guys that put a turbo engine and loom and everything into a non-turbo car and make it a turbo version, or like manual swaps into an auto. Again, complicated. Doable. Everything's doable, but it's just whether it's worth it really, compared to just getting rid and buying the one that you want, rather than spending the time and the effort and the heartache and the pain in actually doing that transfer. So conversation in Spanish going on there. Right. Okay, Lindsay, my previous problem with non-communication with the ECU was solved. Feels stupid though, it was the jumper switch wire fell off. Yeah, I had that very same thing today, where a customer offered to remove the jumper block and the test mode connector wires, and promptly pulled one of the wires out the back of the jumper block, and because he wasn't getting that, the pins joined together, it wasn't going into flash mode. Pat, hi Pat, hope you're well. I am, yeah. EJ205, do the AVCS valves give trouble? Yeah, always. Particularly the exhaust valves, or the exhaust OCVs, they because of where they are on the heat, you get more issues with those. But the AVCS ones for the inlet cause less issues. But if there's an engine failure that's been involved, then the galleries within the AVCS pulley itself can block up, and you can find that you've got a lazy AVCS pulley just because of that. So it is possible to strip them and clean them, but it depends how easy it is to get hold of a new pulley in your area. Again, more Spanish. Yeah, good. Well, it was good to see you again, Stephen. We had Steve's Forester STI on the dyno today this morning. He'd taken out the contents of the second cap, hoping that it would free it up a bit, but it actually had the opposite effect, because the cat had been gutted. there was more back pressure and more turbulence in that area, so it was stopping the car making power. So it's going to come back with a proper straight pipe to get rid of the second cat. Oh, if removing a sports decat for a decat, then having a remap, what would the typical gain be in brake horsepower and pounds foot? It depends on what power you're at the moment. Generally speaking, if it's like a 330 with a sports cat, 330 torque or 330 horsepower, you might see another 5, maybe 10 horsepower from a full decat system, but obviously that's not road legal. But anyway, you make your own decisions on that. So yeah, if you're having issues with sports cats going through MOTs, then why bother with a sports cat? You might as well just swap it out for a proper cat once a year, and do it that way. I do speak a bit of Spanish, and I do understand what I see, but obviously it's too time constrained to follow the conversation. Right. Thanks again, no problem. You're very, very welcome. When I first started doing these things, people here in the UK said, "Oh, you're stupid, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're teaching people how to take your job away from you." And to me, it was like, only a third of the people that watch my videos are in the UK. So 2/3 of the people that watch the videos are obviously not in the UK. It's not affecting my business, but even here in the UK, it's good that people have some knowledge, and I'm really happy to share whatever knowledge that I've built up over the years, because I'm not going to be around forever, but the cars need to be around forever. But it's nice that people know how to look after them, because if you understand the tuning side of things, you understand what can break them. And if you can avoid breaking them, then they're obviously a lot more fun. So happy to share. Happy, if you followed my advice and tuned your car successfully, great. There is also the academy that I run on here, giving people a lot more information, sharing my files with them, and going into a lot more detail as well. So if you're interested in the tuning side of things, then that's probably the best step. Yeah, as Paco says, I'm sure that it's possible, because I know JDM cars that are there that are not UK type approved, like Spec Cs and S204s, those kind of thing that are over there on local plates, so it's possible. Right, 6-speed gearbox might have a grumbly bearing in it. Any places you recommend for overhaul? Take Sport. For the 6-speed, Take Sport. No hesitation, they are the best in the UK for building those. 5 speeds are a little bit more complicated now, because Subaru have stopped supplying the new parts. So what you might find is that the price of second-hand 5-speed gearboxes go up in value as the parts to repair them become more and more scarce. So yeah, you might find that, but the 6-speeds Take Sport all day long. Dun, 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 dun. Is there a modification for the AVCS valves? Not really. Just a case of making sure all the oil ways are clean, and that the valve is operating normally. It's just like a boost solenoid. It just has power and a ground on there, and that opens up the valve. You can physically hear it moving if you can like power it up. So as long as it's moving freely, then it should be working. Because all that does is diverts oil through to the AVCS solenoid or the AVCS pulley, which then advances or retards. So as long as it's just doing that, like the boost solenoid thing where it opens and shuts, then it doesn't need to do anything else. In your honest opinion, right? Just from what I was saying earlier on with regards to the AVCS solenoids that are right near the headers on the exhaust side of things, I would stick with single AVCS. Getting parts and cams and all the rest of it is a lot easier and cheaper, and there's two less things to go wrong. I haven't seen enough advantage from the quad AVCS for it to actually be worth all the extra expense and the risk of things going wrong or breaking. So I would probably stick with single, and with vernier pulleys on the exhaust cams if you're putting cams in there, get them dialed in properly and it will work fine, absolutely fine. Right, Shane, hi Shane. Right, looking to upgrade my brakes on the 07 to WX to Brembos. Found a set for a 350Z. Would they fit on my car? I think the calipers look very similar. I'm not sure about the mounting brackets or bolts. I would guess that the brackets are not the same. It may be more hassle than it's worth to try and get those to fit, as opposed to waiting and getting a set of Brembos, unless they are ridiculously cheap and you can find a way to make them work. But obviously they've got to be safe, they've got to be effective. It may not be worthwhile doing it that way. Just wait for the right set of Brembos to turn up, or fit some, K-Sport or AP or whatever, depending on what your budget is. Yeah, as Neil says, the Brembos, like the early Bug STI Brembos and the Blob STI Brembos, they're best part 20 years old now. So the bleed nipples and the calipers, they corrode, and yeah, it's a world of pain trying to get those out and not damage the calipers. Godspeed do a fabulous refurb of them with new nipples and new bolts, and powder coat them any colour that you like, which is well worth it. But I would try and get the right Brembos for your car rather than trying to fit some that may or may not fit. Right, any experience with the TD04L machine to suit TD04HL 19T? Seems to pull as hard as a VF52 whistles more. Yeah, the TD04 hybrids are really good now. There was a period, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, where they were pretty rubbish, and you were lucky to get sort of 300 horsepower of a hybrid one. It just wasn't worth the aggro, and the bearings and the way they were built was not very good. But now, be it a Fastline one or many other companies do them as well, the TD04 hybrids are regularly doing 350 on the right car with the right bits attached, intercoolers and injectors and all those sort of bits. But they work really well. VF52 is a great turbo as well, but the TD04 hybrid, I think, fills the gap where it's getting increasingly hard to get a good quality second-hand VF35 or VF34 or even a 48 or a 43, because a lot of the exhaust housings on those are cracked. The turbo's 20 years old, 23 years old even, and they've done a lot of mileage now, even if they're sold as a 40,000 mile or was taken off a car that had 40,000 miles, it doesn't mean that that was the first car that it was on or the only car that it's been on. But the hybrids are really good now. The 1.3 open port cable worked amazingly and worked brilliantly back in the day when I was tuning with these. It was only when Tactrix brought out the open port 2 that moved over to that, because my 1.3U broke. I think it was, the cable snapped inside, and I didn't ever replace it. It works great for a 16-bit ECU, so bug-eye, blob-eye, that kind of thing. But for the later cars, the 32-bit ECUs, you need the open port 2 or the open port 2 sort of Tactrix clone kind of thing. To give you the answer to that, my legacy twin turbo is going single turbo. Twin turbo just doesn't work properly. It was an experiment, same as everything on a legacy. It's tested on a legacy. If it works, it goes onto an Impreza. Because they've never done a twin turbo Impreza, kind of tells you how it worked. I would always do a single turbo conversion on that. With turbos now, you can size the turbo properly so that you've got the low down power and the top end power, but without the big gap in the middle, which is really scary when you're trying to overtake cars. Right, there's the GDSTI ProDrive PPP cap fit a TD04. Yeah, the same exhaust flange on those as the VF35 or a TD04 or VF48. All the same exhaust flange, and unless you go into twin scroll, in which case they are completely different. Yeah, that happens. And the bolts are getting hard to find now as well. So, Godspeed will do all that when they do a refurb. Yeah, and Andy built some fabulous turbos back in the day. That was probably 15 years ago, I guess, maybe even more than that. Like his 20Gs were amazing. The 18G was probably my favourite turbo, because that's I think it's the sweet spot for a Subaru, sort of 350 to 380. I think it's perfect. But yeah, some bigger turbos that Andy used to do back in the day were good. Right, what do you need to read your Forester STI ECU? Neil, if it was it Ecotech mapped? If it was, then you may struggle. But if it was open source mapped, then Tactrix cable, open port 2, a means of connecting the test mode connectors if you didn't want to sort of reach under the dash all the time to join those, and obviously the software ECU Flash or ECU Edit, and it will download the ROM contents, and you can make changes, blah blah blah, and upload them to the ECU. Yeah, the twins are great. They've got a real personality, but I just don't like if you look at the power graph on the dyno, it comes up and then goes down and then comes up again. And it's just that bit where it comes down, where it's the sort of 4 to 5,000 RPM, where you kind of into the overtake, and it gets really scary. A proper size turbo, and that gap is filled in, so the area under the curve is much bigger. Yeah, TD04L, a nice hybrid TD04 in there. It's going to fly through, and it's a completely different car. You know, still with the legacy comfort and the handling, and the quirkiness and the things that are way ahead of their time, but without the weird way that it drove. Right, you cannot even drive your car. I want to modify it to run better. I want to keep the twin turbo system. It is better. I'm sorry, but it is better. If it's a B4, there'll be a little bit of electrical bits to do. But it's not a massive job, and then you could just run an STI ECU from the same sort of time. It may be possible, depending on whether Race ROM was used. If Race ROM was used, then no, not possible. If Race ROM wasn't used, and it was just Ecotech locked, then it is possible, but there's a different version of software that you need to do that. Jack, hi Jack. GBR Spec C, what fuel pump would you recommend? I know it's listed to be different from standard, but guessing that's just the housing. Yeah, that's the plastic cage around it. Walbro 255 I still think are way better than the 340, unless you're like up towards the 500 horsepower mark. The 255 will cope with most things. I think I ran pretty much 460, 470 horsepower on a 255 without any issues, but the 255s are more reliable in my experience. Lots of issues with the 340, whether it's doesn't matter where it was bought from. I won't name names, but you know, all the names of tuning companies in the UK, the 340 pumps are less reliable because they're pretty much all built in the same factory. I had a customer, it must have been 15 years ago, and every 2 months he would come back to me, and he'd made some change that was going to really improve it. It was, you know, reversing the mechanism and this, that, and the other. And every time we put it on the dyno, it made absolutely solid difference. There is just too big a air chamber between the two turbos to actually get rid of the valley of death. Nothing that he did changed it. Nothing that I could do within the map would change it. It was just a physical thing. In the end, I told him that, you know, as much as I loved him paying me money, it was not worth it. Fit a single turbo. Tim, if you're in the UK, speak to Martin Hall down in Southampton. He'll tell you everything that you need to do to go from twin to single, and you can make your mind up as to what whether it's worth it or not. Dun, 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 dun. Right, excuse me while I'm trying to read what's going on here. Okay, yeah, so single turbo. Right. Was that for the 4-cylinder, or was that for the 6s? I'm not sure on that. I seem to remember something from back in the day as well, Neil. But the problem you have is an ECU to control the 2 turbos. The standard ECU won't do it, not in the way that you'd want it to on that. So then you're into, you know, aftermarket ECUs. So the Lynx and the Cyvex of the world, and you know, it gets expensive. Right, how are we doing time wise? These sessions, I normally run them for an hour, but if I run out of questions, I'll finish it early. So you know, an hour is enough for most weeks. Sometimes there's this big rush of questions right at the end, and you know, I shut the session and like 5 questions pop up. But yeah, if you got a question, far away. At the moment, there seems to be an awful lot about twin turbo legacies. Fabulous cars, amazing cars. Got one myself, but it's going to go single turbo. It will get something like a 400 horsepower turbo of some shape or form on a in this case a 2.5 bottom end, even though a lot of people are under the impression that I don't like the 2.5 engine. I do like the 2.5 for the road. It's fabulous. For track, not so fabulous. It's not a problem. You know, questions are questions. You know, I don't care whether, you know, whether I have a whole hour on cylinder 4 cooling mods. You know, people saying yes it works, and me saying prove it. We can do all of that. It doesn't matter to me. You know, most questions are, you know, unless you ask a question, you'll never get an answer. Don't wait for someone else to ask it. The only questions that get a little bit repetitive are what oil, but generally speaking, if I answer that question now, actually, I use Liquimoly 1060 Racetech oil, works great. I'd use Motul 1550, again that worked amazingly in the race car, but it's massively expensive now. Would you treat it the same as any other 2-litre STI or so legacy, slightly different cam-wise? I think they're all very different cam-wise. I don't think they're so different that it would be. It's not like a 170 horsepower Forester XT, one of the early 2-litre ones, where the cams are really soft and the compression is really low. As a JDM model, it's fairly high compression anyway. So you should pretty much treated like a WRX, I would say. Right, do mapping sessions of pole position? Do you travel to any other places further up north? Not at the moment, but been talking about going up to Scotland and whatever. But if there is enough demand, I'll go anywhere really. Caribbean is lovely. At this time of year when it's, well, today was not freezing cold, but the last few days here have been absolutely parky as hell. So yeah, if there's enough demand, then I'm happy to go anywhere tuning. Yeah, and north of the border, I speak to people all the time from all over the UK, from all over the world, and I'm happy to go over to anywhere to map, because I love what I do, but driving up to Scotland and back is kind of like 3 days, so yeah, it needs to kind of be worthwhile. Ooh. Right, advantages of high compression engine. I remember you saying it's harder to advise the timing on them. Yes, on normal fuel, on pump fuel. If you're running race fuel or methanol or enhanced fuel, then high compression will just bring it alive. It will make power at less boost. It will not need as much ignition timing, but it is very sensitive to fuel quality. So hence why things like the Forester XT has slightly lower compression, because they're more forgiving for the farmers of the world where they're running whatever fuel. The JDM STI is much higher compression, because JDM market, great quality fuel. So yeah, the higher the compression, the more perky it's going to feel, really. Oh, wrong one. Fitting one-piece drop links on a Forester STI, like the White Line KLC 32. Any concerns that they might overstress the mounted tab on the alloy control arms? None whatsoever. The thing that I found with the adjustable ones is the ball joints at the end tend to seize up, and then it's really noisy and horrible. I had the White Line adjustable ones on my Forester STI. In the end, I took them off, even with the stiffer anti-roll bar, and fitted the standard drop links, and it was perfect. Yeah, you just treat that like as if you had the cylinder 4 cooling mod. So yeah, but speak to Martin Hall. He's your expert on legacies. Right. Yeah, the bump steer correction kit really works. That lowers the ball joint and the track rod end sort of pivot point, so it's a really good mod, particularly if the car's lowered. But they wear out a lot quicker than the standard items, by the way. Okay, recently replaced my injectors for some dark blues. Just wanted to understand a little bit more about tip and enrichment and how adjusting values affects engine performance. Yeah, what was in there before? I presume it was a WRX, and you had the standard WRX injectors, like the 420cc injectors. tip-in, or the tip-in tables that are in the ROM, any change in throttle position, so it's measuring the delta between what it was and what it is now. So depending on the size of that change, it will add an extra lump of fuel. If it's too much fuel, the car will splutter and bog down. If it's not enough fuel, then it will again sort of stutter and then wait until it settles down. If you got those values wrong, you'll know about it. If they're right, then it should just be seamless from little throttle changes to full throttle changes. It should kind of just go a little bit richer and then stay there. From changing from the 420s to the 550s, if they're both the standard items, then there isn't an awful lot of difference in the tip-in values. But obviously data log and see what's going on. If you're seeing that, like if you've got a wideband on there and as well, which would be particularly useful. If you're seeing when you're putting your foot down that it dips really rich, then obviously reduce the values in that tip-in table. If it's not going rich enough, or if it's going lean, then add more, basically. Data will tell you the answer. Da-da-dum. Right. Any more questions, guys, or am I going to finish tonight's session early? Next week there'll be 2 live streams. There'll be one for the Academy members where I'll be going through data logs and roasting their ROMs. So the guys will hopefully send me some latest data logs and their ROM file, and I'll look through the data and offer suggestions of what they could change in the map to actually improve things, or just give them a big pat on the back to say, well done, great job. Always been a really good, detailed, geeky, nerdy session, but it's one that I enjoy doing. And there'll be a live stream as well next week. Yeah, no. Sorry, Kev, but yeah, even if you're on fire, I wouldn't. I don't normally slag off other tuning companies, but search Google for Scuba Clinic and potholes, and you'll find your answer for how they treat their customers' cars. Right. Single turbo, would you go for on a Legacy for 330? In the past, I would say VF35 or a VF28, something around that sort of size, but they're getting really old and really hard to find a good quality one. TD04 hybrid now is a perfect solution. I think they're like £600, £700 for a rebuilt turbo that will easily make that power. Good option compared to a £350, £400 for a 23-year-old VF35 that might be dead already. Right, JDM Legacy 5-speed boxes, are they better than UK WRX? I had a BP5 Legacy JDM 2-litre turbo, twin scroll, and the gearbox on that whined. Still whines. Had it rebuilt, still whined. But it's never broken. That car, I brought that into the country probably 10 years ago, and it's still going strong now. In fact, it's in the garage in 2 weeks' time to take off the horrible coilovers that someone's put on it and put on standard suspension. the JDM legacy 5-speed boxes are really low ratio, so good for acceleration. Bum, bum, bum. Right. Okay, I think we're running out of questions now, so I'm going to thank you all for joining me, and yeah, have a great evening, and I will see you very soon. Cheers, guys.